So this piece was created through the ALWCA microgrant program for LGBTQ artists. And we're really excited. This is the first piece that we've had completed through the program, and we can't wait to hear about your creative process and how it all came together. So Corinna, take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity. I'll start out by saying that when I saw the application open for this, for the longest time, I was like, no, I'm not doing this. So I think I probably submitted my application like a few minutes before the deadline. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna whip something out. Probably not gonna get selected, so I won't really have to worry about actually creating the piece. And then, yeah, when I got that email, it was a pleasant surprise, also a little nerve wracking because I was like, oh no, now I actually have to like create this piece and put it all out there. So yeah, it was good, but also scary at the same time, just because of what the subject matter was. And I guess I'll kind of talk about what the piece is. Okay, so when with the prompt of like describing your queer experience of living while living in the South, for me, I think the biggest thing is that there's always like an element of fear for me, as far as just coming out to other people. And the way that I navigate my queer identity, I think is largely based on my employment, like where I work, because that's where I spend like the majority of my time. And so that's been the most difficult for me to navigate, is being around these people that you work with them 8-9 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they want to know you. That was the biggest challenge for me working there, is that everybody wants to know who you are. They don't want to just know, okay, we work together. They want to know your family life, your personal life. And that was something that I always struggled with. And when I first started working at my job, I was very, very reserved, private, standoffish. I did not want anybody to really know who I was, or I didn't want to have, I didn't want to get caught in some sort of conversation where I had to reveal, my personal life or anything like that. So I just basically closed myself off as much as I could. Basically, you knew my name, you knew what I did, and you knew that I, like to paint, and that was pretty much it. So I was like that for the first few years of working there, and then as I slowly became more comfortable around certain coworkers, I would reveal a little bit about myself. But it was very much a cautious approach, and also just kind of giving a little bit, seeing how they react, how they take it, and then maybe giving a little bit more, but still being very private about like specifics. And so that to me kind of translated as just really kind of having a shield up, I guess. And you had to really get close to me, and I had to really gain this level of trust with you for me to like take a break down, or start to reveal a little bit. And then the flip side of that is me wanting to be out and proud, me wanting to share my story with everybody. And I guess something that I've always believed is that this idea of homophobia and people that feel like being queer or gay or whatever it is bad. By not being out and not being proud of who you are, you're basically telling them they're right. Like there's something wrong with this, and that's why I'm in the closet. And so I've always felt negatively about that. Like I felt like I shouldn't closet myself, because then I'm basically telling those people, you're right. Like it's not normal. And I didn't want to feel that. And so there was this part of me that wants to be out and wants to be proud and wants to just share my story and make it normal. And then the other part that also understands the reality. I do live in the Bible Belt, and I've faced lots of homophobia here. I've faced people that you know, without knowing anything about my identity, talk very negatively about queer people. And it just made me completely closed off and realized that I had to protect myself. I had to be careful with who I talked to, who I shared my identity with. And so that's like that challenge between the two. And that's what I tried to portray in the painting. So in the background, the actual portrait, the self-portrait, I wanted to portray myself in kind of not necessarily a bold, but almost confident manner that my shirt on the front of it says, "Let me be perfectly queer," which is just like, coming out there, let me be who I am, and not being afraid to wear the shirt, and just kind of a little bit of a smile, just to show, this is who I am. I'm proud of this. I'm confident in this. And then to show kind of the other side where I protect that identity, I wanted to find a way to kind of blur that line to where where you couldn't immediately see everything that I was sharing with you. And that's where the fabric across the canvas came into play. And it was important that it was a sheer fabric so that you could see my portrait through, but you couldn't clearly see it. And so in order to really see what was behind the fabric, you had to get close to the painting, essentially getting close to me. You had to build a relationship with me in order to see what was behind the veil. And that's where Veiled for the title comes in. So this is pretty much the overall view of the painting with the sheer fabric. There was something about the length that I wasn't sure if I wanted it just to be, right where the canvas stops or where it drags on the floor. That's something that I changed. I'm not entirely sure. And so here you'll see, or you might be able to see at the top, I have courage written. And then underneath, I've got kind of this list where it goes from found to lost to found to lost. And it keeps crossing out. And so the idea that is really about the moments, that it's not a permanent thing. It's not, I'm not always confident. I'm not always courageous. Sometimes it depends. Like depending on the person that I meet, I'll be more courageous. I'll decide to come out. But if I don't know you, then I'll be a little more cautious. And I think the lost, where the courage is lost, I think is kind of the norm. And then where the courage is found, that's momentary. I think it depends on like who I meet, the conversation that we have, how comfortable I become with you, how much I trust you. And that's where I'll decide, okay, I feel courageous. I can come out to you. I can tell you my story. But I think that's fleeting for the most part. I haven't quite gotten to where that is just in the foreground, where I'm always courageous. And, ideally I would like to get to that point. I'm not sure if I ever will, but I will acknowledge that it is fluid. It kind of just depends on who I'm interacting with. It depends on my environment. And the levels of courageousness varies too.
So when you are experiencing these moments of lost courage, what kinds of things do you do to help get you through those times?
I think I just have to get to know the person. So that forces me to kind of create a bond with someone. It's difficult to navigate. I mean, quite honestly, when I've lost the courage, I kind of just try to blend in, I guess, and just really try to get comfortable with my environment. Try to see, how people tend to believe. If they themselves start talking about their queer best friend or whatever, I might become more comfortable. So that kind of, it forces me to have to kind of have conversations with people, honestly. Like I just have to put myself out there to get to know them on a personal level. It doesn't have to be about my queer identity or anything like that, but just to really get to know them and for them to get to know me. And then once I start to build that trust, then I can kind of, get out of that lost courage and get in, and find it. But it's a process. It's not something that I navigate easily. And it really is just a matter of like putting myself out there and forcing myself to build relationships with people.
Awesome. Thank you. So this one is a picture that I would like to talk about. I love that you have incorporated this fabric piece in with your canvas. Um, what inspired you to actually use this? And were there any unforeseen challenges that came up when you were putting this together?
Yeah. So using fabric in the first place is unusual for me. I've never created anything where I'm using actual objects. That's not normal for me. I tend to stick to paint, stick to, my drawing tools, the canvas that I have. I've never really worked with like using other materials as part of the process. But I felt like me painting a veil across myself wouldn't entirely get the point across that I was trying to, where you could, if you got closer to me, where you could see more information versus when you're standing further back. So I needed it to be something that physically could be removed. And it was just important for me that um, that my self-portrait, which stands in for me, was actually clear, and that it wasn't blurred out when you got closer. And so I needed it to be fully painted, where you had all the details of me, where it became more realistic. And then you had to have this process of engaging with the work. So if someone chooses not to get close to the painting, then they won't learn the information about me, which is really the relationship that I want to establish. So if there is a distance between the painting and the viewer, it kind of embodies my real life interactions with people that I might not be very close with, that from a distance, they see, okay, there's a person, she's got curly hair, she looks like a woman, you know, and that's pretty much the extent of the information that they have. And in order for them to actually get to know me, they have to, with the painting, they have to get closer to it. And in real life, they have to establish like a close relationship with me where that trust is established. So it was important for me to be able to remove the veil, essentially. And the only way I could think to do that was to literally put a veil over the painting. I'm a very literal person.
Well, I love it. I think that it comes across so well. It's a really interesting thing to see in a piece of art. And it seems like it's gonna be a really neat piece to interact with in person.
Yeah, so this photograph kind of shows what it looks like when you remove that veil, when you lift it, that you actually get to see the information that's behind the veil. And so with the Alabama state, and underneath, it's got written Bible Belt. That was, so a lot of how I express my identity is built largely on where I grew up, and that is in Alabama. But I've also experienced 4 years of living in California, which I feel like are two complete opposite ends of the spectrum as far as expression of queer identity. And so having spent 4 years, this is, during graduate studies, so I was an adult, I knew who I was. Being able to express my identity in California was so almost uninteresting. Like, no, it wasn't like anyone really cared, because it was just so normal. Everyone, it's really interesting. When I lived in California, I navigated everywhere I went, assuming that everyone was somewhere on the spectrum of being queer, bi, gay. I never assumed anybody to be straight in California. It was, I had to get to know them, and then they had to let me know I'm straight, or I just give me that information. But otherwise, I navigated California as if everybody was queer. coming to Alabama, it's completely opposite. You kind of navigate everything assuming everybody is straight, and that you have to kind of learn about them to find out that they're not. And having spent those 4 years living in California, where it was perfectly normal to be out and proud, to have these conversations about queer identity in the same manner of talking about what movie is coming out. It was just part of our normal conversation. To coming back to Alabama and almost immediately experiencing homophobia, it shocked me. It shocked my system. And I was like, whoa, okay, I can't be that comfortable. I have to protect myself. I have to be careful. I have to get to know who these people are and how they feel and believe before I can reveal anything about myself. And essentially, I went back into the closet. And yeah, it was a shock to the system. And living in the Bible Belt, it just really kind of, it's strong. It's a strong thought that you have to think about every time you go somewhere. You know, where's their mindset coming from? What's their background? What are their beliefs? What's really guiding how they navigate the world? And so it's very different. And those two extremes, I think, have a lot to do with the veiling of my identity and just, you know, being slow to come out. And so here you see just the painting itself. And really the only way to see this is if you completely remove the veil, get close to it. There are bits of information on the canvas. There's a lot of writing on the canvas to kind of explore how I navigate my identity. I wanted it to be kind of like woven pieces of information into this painting. I didn't feel like just having a self-portrait was going to be enough. And that was another part that was a little different for me, was to use words in my art. I've always kind of refrained from using words because I always felt like giving too much information to the viewer kind of takes away the opportunity for the viewer to kind of explore their own understanding of the piece. But with this piece being so specific about my identity, I felt like it was okay. And I felt like it was beneficial to have words that the viewer can engage with.
Oh, I love the inclusion of the words. Is there a reason that you chose this specific quote from HRC?
Yeah, so that quote speaks specifically about pansexual identity. Pansexuality was kind of something that I'd recently, within the last couple years or two or 3 years, that I kind of realized, okay, this is how I most closely identify. The words were kind of perfect in that the quote kind of really goes into how pansexuality itself is complicated. That is this identity that is also hidden, and it kind of makes you invisible because someone might assume that I'm straight, or might assume that I'm gay, or might assume that I only like women or only like men, or only like cis women, cis men, that it just kind of, it was interesting to me that the pansexual identity is almost as complicated as me, I feel like. And it really described that invisibility is something that we have to make sure it doesn't happen. And that it's something that has to be explored, has to be talked about, to just really what it pointed out to me is that you can't assume anything about anybody. You really just have to get to know them and not have this idea of who they are. And that's something that I've kind of struggled with a lot of my parts of my identity, is that a lot of times I just feel invisible in so many different aspects. And so that really, it just spoke to me a lot.
I absolutely love this. It's really powerful, especially creating it in Alabama. That representation is really important here in the Bible Belt. And thank you for having the courage to put this together and put it out there. It's really wonderful. What would you say is your favorite part of
Um, quite honestly, it's interesting like enough, it's not really the piece itself, the painting, it's the experience that this painting has sort of forced me into. So when I decided to do the painting, I had to kind of reveal that I was doing this. And I guess when I first kind of announced that I was doing this, I actually did it at my job. And I don't think I entirely thought ahead when I announced that I had received this grant. I was just excited. I was like, I got this grant. I'm going to be creating this painting. I did not, I kind of just shared it, every morning at my job, we have these morning huddles where we kind of just talk about what's going on, news and things like that. And then, if anybody has anything that they want to share with the group, it's kind of just open for everyone to share. And I was just excited. And I was like, yeah, over the weekend, I found out that I've received a grant to create a painting. So, that's what I'll be doing this month. And, everybody was excited for me and kind of just moved on from that. And I thought that was going to be it. And then the rest of the day, people were coming up to me and they were like, so what's this painting going to be about? And I was like, oh, like, oh no, like now I have to actually tell people. And so it was, it kind of started initially, it was like, well, let me just tell you what the theme is. And that's how it kind of started. And then the more I talked about it, and the more interested people were, I started to tell them what my proposal was and what I planned to do for the painting. And it forced me to come out to people that I did not plan to come out to. And the reception from that, everybody seemed really excited for me. And, they didn't, you always have like these ideas in your head about how people are going to react. And they're going to be like, oh, like, I didn't know this about you. But everybody was just like really like, oh, that's really awesome. Like, I can't wait to see it. It sounds amazing. So that is probably the most interesting and my favorite part about the painting is not so much the painting itself, but the experience that I've had in talking to people. And it's really kind of forced me to find that courage, to lean more into the found of the courage rather than the lost. And not sure how long that will last, but with this piece, being put on social media, I've been sharing it on my page. And so really it's come down to it being a coming out piece for me, something that I could have avoided had I not accepted this process. But it's been good. It's made me grow, and it really has kind of having to explain the piece to multiple people several times. It's really kind of it's given me practice. Like,
are there any like specific emotions or understandings that you hope people pull from this piece when they view it?
Yeah, and so I think it'll be interesting to see how people choose to navigate the piece. I envision that some people will be scared to approach the piece. I think that's in general with art, we're taught that when you go to a gallery or museum, you don't touch the art, you don't get close to the art. So I fully believe that some people will never get close to the painting and they'll never really get to know what's behind the veil. And then there's the other group of people that want to touch the art. They always want to touch the art, and they're the ones that are going to get close and actually explore what's behind the veil. And I hope in that they do understand that it is a choice that they had to make, that it's a choice that they made to get close to the painting. So essentially to me. And then there's also, I guess, a consequence after that. You have to then navigate the information that was given to you, and how do you react to that information? Does it make you uncomfortable? Does it make you feel closer to me? Did you learn something new that you wouldn't have known if you hadn't taken the time to get close to the piece and really relay that to real life interactions? That if you choose to stand back and choose to not get close, then, you know, the consequence of that is that you get the surface, but if you choose to get closer and you learn something about someone, um, it is then up to you to decide how you react, how you respond to that information. You know, are you accepting? Does it make you uncomfortable? Um, you know, I think it'll be a really interesting. I mean, I would love to install a camera above the piece and kind of just see, you know, what the interactions are. You know, who stands back, who gets close, and jokingly, I had this idea that you know, I was gonna put this into a gallery and have like ropes in front of it. You know, several feet in front of it, where I was standing at the ropes, and based on my conversations with people, I would choose who gets to go in, and I kind of describe the experience that based on how much I trust you on the conversations we have is how, you know, how much I choose to reveal to you. And just like, it was just kind of like this humorous idea of like, you know, people wondering like, well, why can't I get close to you, you know? I don't think I'll do that, but it would be interesting to kind of see, you know, what people's reactions are to the piece and how they choose to interact with it.
Oh, absolutely. I think that camera would be a really neat idea when you install it.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Thank you for telling
Thank
us
you.
all about your piece and for putting it out there. I can't wait to see it in person. And I am just so
Yeah.
excited to have you here and to get to talk to you today.